Welcome back to Bear It All Podcast. My name is Brittany Lo, and I'm the founder and CEO of Bea. And today I have my friend Jordan Laurelle, who's a mindset and magnetism coach, who's going to be joining us to talk all things manifestation and really channeling our own power as we enter 2025.
Yay.
Thank you so much for coming on.
It's so full circle because it was such an honor to have you as a guest on mine last year. And so it's fun to be on the opposite end.
I have so many questions. I wanted you specifically to come on the top of the year because you have so many nuggets of knowledge and information that I know I walked away our conversation applying to my life. And I was really excited for our listeners and community to learn so much from you today. So thank you for coming on.
I'm so glad.
And so tell me a little bit more about being a magnetism coach versus a manifestation coach.
Manifestation changed my life. And it did so much for me, especially in terms of helping me step into my power. But I, throughout my manifestation journey, realized there was a lot of things that were missing from a lot of what is being taught about manifestation. And a lot of it really comes down to your relationship with yourself.
And I want to share some exercises that anyone listening can apply and try out as they're listening to this episode. But before we go into that, I am always fascinated on people's careers path and what was that defining moment that led that person onto the path that they are currently on. And so what was that moment? What happened that inspired you to now become this coach with this incredible platform?
Ooh. So I think there's probably 2 or 3 moments.
Take a few.
So the first was probably, I really hit rock bottom. I had just gotten out of an abusive marriage and left. I was raised in a cult, like a very extreme religious group. And I made the decision to get out of the marriage and to stop being a part of that cult and stop thinking that way. So that rock bottom was probably the first a turning point for me when I started to be like, okay, like I'm not okay.
Yes.
How do I do something about this? I am just literally crippled with anxiety. I don't know who I am. I don't know how to connect to myself. Like that was when I realized like I needed to do some work. And then fast forward to about a year and a half later, I moved that was spring of 2020. Okay. And then end of 2021, a year and a half later, I had met somebody that summer. Life seemed to be going well. And then that relationship crashed and burned. And I decided to move across the country by myself. And it was in the airport. I felt so scared, so alone, but it was my first time I actually was listening to that voice inside of me. I'm so big on insourcing. It is such insourcing is tuning inward to find out what should I be doing? How should I be living? Who should I be being? So many of us tune outward. We're taught to look externally for validation, for information on what should I do with my life? How should I be? What's okay? What's not okay? And, we're trying to fit in and be accepted. It's very human. But when you're letting other people and cultures and society dictate more of who you're being and how you're living your life, more so than you and being in alignment with yourself. And I was raised very religious. So that was super woo, crazy, what is this? And I was like, you know what? What do I have to lose? So I ended the marriage. I ended end of 2019, hit rock bottom during when COVID hit, because I was just kind of event life. You can just live your best life in the city and not have a reality check. And we also
didn't mention that you are an influencer, content creator. You have a bunch of followers and a community. So separately from coaching, you did have all these lavish events to go to every night with these different PR and brands. And it's a nice life. But also a way to conceal any kind of emotions and traumas, because you can just keep your schedule very busy by going to events.
I did a life coach training. I really got into the mindset aspect. And then it was that fall of 2021 that when that relationship ended, it just broke me. And something was go to California. I'd always been drawn to it. My ex and I had actually been to LA and San Diego and had explored, and we actually both were wanting to move out there. And I was I don't care what he's doing, I'm going. And it was honestly, and that was before still I discovered manifestation, before I took that leap of faith. But something in me, it was that listening to that something in me was that saying, you need to go there. And I never would listen to that. I was raised being told that like my desires were wrong. And it is literally the worst thing you could ever do. It is the biggest form of self-sabotage to not trust your desires and to trust your heart. And, I'm not talking about like unhealthy coping mechanisms that you think are desires, like, binge watching a show or binge drinking or binge eating, like, to numb your emotions. I'm talking about like deep desires. Like I absolutely love to paint, or I, love connecting with people, like listening to those things that really light your soul on fire. And something about California, just there was this pull, and I listened to it. I was like, I had started that year and a half, I'd started just like listening to myself, and everything kept going great when I would listen to myself. So that was like a big leap of faith I took on that, listening to myself. And, it was at the airport on the way moving to San Diego that I discovered manifestation. And so then I just got obsessed with it, and I started posting about it. And then I ended up, eventually coaching on it, I became obsessed because it changed me. So it changes you from the inside out, this work.
Wow. And so you had grown your following before all of this. And so what, I guess, content pillars did you grow your community on? And then did you switch your content once you became obsessed with manifestation?
Yeah. So it's been such a journey, girl. I started out in 2016 with a blog and was like purely fashion focused, and quickly became lifestyle and travel mixed in with like fashion and beauty. As you kind of know, we kind of all added a bit of lifestyle in as the industry grew. And I would say around sometime later in 2022 was when I started to infuse a lot of manifestation into everything. And then I started my podcast early 2023. And I just had so much interest. Like people were so excited about it. But I decided the reason why then I kind of made that shift to magnetism is because it's really about who you're being. And this internal work is so important, and I'm all about following the manifestation steps, but it's more important. It's all to help you be that person who has the thing. And so for me, magnetism is really, it's about who you're being. And so how I dress affects my energy. My lifestyle affects my energy. My routines affect my energy. When I put my makeup on after I've had a really rough night or day or whatever, like I feel like a new person. It's for me, it's all about how do you be this magnetic version of you, this person who's magnetic to your dreams and desires, and it's all of it.
Wow. And I do remember even seeing that shift on your content as you launch your podcast and get leaning more and more into this part of your platform. And I feel like that's really giving you such a beautiful identity of like helping others, and I think your story is so inspiring. And so for anyone it's 2025. So whether someone's trying to manifest this new business that they have an idea for, or level up in their careers, or they're, trying to manifest the partner of their dreams, like between manifestation, magnetism, like what is the first 3 things to do?
They get so caught up in the specifics, and we're co-creating with the universe, and there is an element of surrender involved. And when you're too attached to the specifics, I've just found personally, I block the magic. Like the universe is always giving you what you need and better. And sometimes it looks different than what we want or think we want. But it's always truly better. And so get clear on how you want to feel, because that helps you be a little less attached to like it looking an exactly specific way, and more about the energy of what you're calling in.
You know what's interesting is that my friend last New Year's Eve said, write yourself an email for this New Year's Eve, like what happened, but how do you feel about each of these things? And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But I remember being like, oh, I was really excited about this level of sales, and I am now engaged, the love of my life, and X, Y, Z. And I'm so intrigued to read that and like compare like the feelings, not only just now like checking off the boxes, but like, oh my gosh, I feel way more even excited. Like maybe the proposal was in a different place than I wrote down, but the feeling, I can't even describe it. And so I think that's really fascinating that you talk about the feelings, because similar in like entrepreneurship, sometimes it's not just about like, I want to create this the best skincare brand out there. And we're very tied to the idea, but I always tell people the biggest thing you need to know is learn how to adapt, because the idea that you start with is never going to be the idea that you end with. And if you're so fixated on a certain idea, yet no one resonates with it, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you are tied to a mission or what you want to accomplish and like the bigger picture, that's going to carry you, and it's going to allow you to adapt and grow it in a much bigger opportunity than you ever even imagined. And so that kind of goes back to what you're saying is like the feelings and the emotions that surround those, that checklist is even more important than having it happen in a very specific way.
I actually had such an amazing experience dating in New York last year, and everybody's like, New York's the worst place to date. And I was like, I had the best experiences. And I think it was because of that. I think, it was because of the inner work. I learned how to give myself everything I was looking for a man to give me. And I also was so unattached, or did my best to stay, and did a pretty good job staying unattached to the person. And I kept staying attached to, what am I calling in? What is this beautiful relationship? And being able to do that allows you to be in flow and not cling to things that aren't meant for you.
Right. And so if someone is in New York City or in a city, they're struggling to find a partner and they're feeling really down, right? Like, I think if things are going well, or you're open, if you're in the right mindset, I think more opportunity, you're more willing to have things. But if you are right now in New York City, you're single and you're feeling a little down about the dating scene, what should I do?
Oh yeah. Okay. So a couple of things. I'll share what helped me a lot. Cause I was there. I was so frustrated. It's so funny. I had a little like rant to the universe, like right before I met my partner. But it happens, we have frustrations as humans. We're human, and sometimes we lose patience, and you gotta like hold space for those feelings, but then you gotta neutralize it and shift back into trusting. Like, I know this person that I'm calling in, they're coming in divine timing. And then get really fucking grateful for your current life and look for how you have what you're calling in your life right now. If you're calling in wealth or abundance, like, how do you have it in your life now? Yeah. If you are looking for love, how do you have that in your life now? And create a version of yourself in your life that you're wildly in love with. Because it's like, I've heard people use the term like the honey pot. Like, you literally become this pot of honey that everybody is drawn to. Like, they want more of you because your energy is amazing, because you're in gratitude and you're vibrating so high. I was so full of joy. I was so excited about myself and who I'd become, excited about my life when I met my partner in May. And he was just like, your energy is amazing. Like, and people were telling me that all the time, like, not to sound arrogant, but like, I was in such a good state because I stopped depending on needing. That's the thing. This is where we get hung up. We are depending on this thing or this person to make us feel a certain way. And guess what? That won't ever last. It's not sustainable. You've got to learn how to give it to yourself first and foremost. And then it's an add-on. But if you're dependent on it, it just honestly, like, I've even seen I've seen myself do it in my own relationships. Like, you ruin the relationship when you're looking to it for your happiness.
Reliant on anyone too much. I think there's so much pressure that I see certain people give, and sometimes I fall into that where I'm like, okay, I want him to make me feel this, and why isn't he doing this? And I think when we display so much of our wants or what we're looking for on other people versus internalizing it and figuring out ways that we can take ownership for that piece of your life, it can be very draining or add a lot of pressure to relationships, which you don't really want anyways.
Right. And like, yes, we have needs, we have desires, like, those things are healthy. Like, you better be happy with your person most of the time. They should make you happy. They should make you feel loved and beautiful, like, to a degree. But if you don't have those things first and foremost, if you're not able to give yourself those things first and foremost, they're going to be pouring water into a cup with a hole at the bottom. Yeah. And
so first it's like getting very clear on what you're looking for and how you feel. What's number 2?
Number 2 is to get really good with yourself. Like, I cannot emphasize the importance of being, that's my 2 parts to becoming magnetic are getting in flow with the universe. So that's understanding how to manifest, and then getting in flow with yourself. I worked so hard after my breakup in January 2023 to build a secure attachment with myself. Because a lot of issues in relationships stem from like attachment issues or codependency. And so I worked really hard to create that stability and safety within myself. Again, I was looking to a partner to make me feel safe and to make me feel stable. And I had to learn how to give that to myself.
Wow.
And a big part of that is emotional availability. Learning how to deal with your emotions, to handle your emotions, to hold yourself. And so honestly, like one of the biggest things that you can do in life is to learn how to become your own biggest support, best friend, lover, like build that relationship to you, because like no one is ever going to be to you what you can be to you.
But how do you start? So for example, I think maybe it's just me, but maybe other people can relate to this, but sometimes it's hard to like look at yourself in your mirror and be like, you're doing so great when you're so focused on like, oh, I could have done this better, or oh, why did I just have that extra cookie, or whatever it might be. Like, I also think that I personally think sometimes I'm my own worst critic. And so how did you, it's one thing to say like, okay, I need to talk, I have to be myself's best friend and I need to do X, Y, Z, but how do you get there? How do you go from being your worst critic to your now like best friend?
So it starts with awareness. So when you catch yourself calling yourself lazy because you didn't do this thing, or like shaming yourself for eating that cookie, you've got to sit down and be like, okay, what's going on? There's no need to bully myself, and actually get into how you're feeling and why are you, I've struggled a lot with self-judgment and shaming myself surrounding my ADHD. I will have trouble staying on task, being on time, executing. Like there's been a lot of things that I've worked really hard to get good at that like normal people don't struggle as much as, somebody who's neurodivergent. And I used to really shame myself, and I used to have to stop. And instead of the shame and the judgment, I got curious. Why? What's going on? And honestly, a lot of people with ADHD have been shamed for being overstimulated and not being able to execute when they actually needed encouragement or support. And most of the time there's feelings of overwhelm going on, or there's like limiting beliefs about myself, like I'm going to do a bad job at this and that's why I'm procrastinating, or I feel like I'm not going to be able to get it done. Like there's stuff going on, there's thoughts and feelings going on inside of me, and like I need to hold space for those for myself and hold myself in those, and then coach myself through them and be like, okay, we're going to do our best, and our best is enough. And so it's honestly, a lot of us do it because that's what our parents or our teachers did to us. And our relationships with our parents, like those are our blueprint for our relationship with ourselves. It shocked me when I realized how much the way I talk to myself and treat myself is how my parents talked to me and treated me.
Wow.
And a lot of it wasn't great. So I've had to learn how to had to learn how to parent myself, but also how to retrain that inner parent, because we all have this like inner parent. And I want to be a kind and loving parent to myself. I don't want to be beating myself up or shaming myself. Like, no one's perfect. We all make mistakes, and I'm a good person. There's almost always a reason when I show up in a way that I'm like, my brain is just like, why'd you do that? That was bad. Like, there's always a reason. And like
tension. It's always from a good place.
Or I'm struggling. I'm afraid. I don't think I'm going to do a good job, or I'm overwhelmed. And so, just like you would a little child, if you can kind of sit down with yourself and be like, hey, like what's actually going on, and come with curiosity and compassion, it goes a long way in then being able to retrain that voice, because you don't need shame. You don't need judgment to get yourself to operate better. You need compassion and understanding, and then to actually work with yourself and coach and support yourself into functioning better.
So be curious. I like that. Understanding your why. So like this might have happened, but why? And really taking back those layers so you can understand it and apply that to future situations. And so what's the third thing? So first, we're manifesting and having clarity on the feelings around what we want. The next piece is then understanding, like being in tune with ourselves and being curious of like, or how do we do the inner work, I'd say. And then what would you say is the third piece of the puzzle?
I think I'd say 2 is building a really healthy relationship with yourself, a secure relationship with yourself. Oh gosh, there's like so many fun things I could touch on.
Like, do you think visuals, like I think, you know, there's the example of, oh my gosh, Jim Carrey, who wrote like a $10 million check and kept it in his wallet, and it was subconsciously always there. And he gave himself an expiration date. And funny enough, it happened like days before his check expired. Or you see people, make a vision board and keep it on their phone. Or we have one hung in the back of our office. Like, do those, like the visual, do you think that helps? Or do you think, what would be your third? Because I always wonder, does that help?
I love those things and they all help, but a lot of people aren't able to manifest using those things because they're not addressing the root blocks. And I think probably the third thing I would say is to really retrain your brain. Most of the ways that we sabotage ourselves and block ourselves from what we want to manifest are starting with limiting beliefs that we have in our head. So if you can I think journaling is great for this. And a technique that I use with a lot of clients is once they've gotten clear on what they want, I ask them to write out every single thought that they have that contradicts like anything but excitement for that thing coming in. So if like you're like, I want to manifest this dark, tall, handsome man who's emotionally available and who, is ready for a family or this, whatever. If you don't feel anything but excitement, that means to me, when your feelings aren't good, that means there's something wrong happening up in your brain. What thoughts are coming up for you? And most of the time it's like, well, does he even exist? Would he like me? Am I good? Like there's probably a zillion thoughts going on in your head and you're operating from those thoughts. Right. Those thoughts are creating your feelings and your thoughts and feelings create your actions and those create your reality. If you're running around with a narrative in your head that there's no good men in the city, you're not going to find a good man. And guess what? He could smack you in the face.
And you still want to see him.
And you would be like, you would literally sabotage it. I've had to work so hard on this in my own relationship right now because I have such bad abandonment wounding. And this is why nervous system work is important. Even the retraining the brain, you have to also retrain your nervous system. My brain and my nervous system were like, we're going to get abandoned. And like, if you stay stuck in that, you will create the man abandoning you. And I've caught myself like sabotaging, like looking for problems or, being hypercritical of him because like, I'm like, well, he's definitely going to abandon me, and so it's crazy.
It's true. And I do think that there are certain people, when you're dating, they're like, I've had such a bad experience and this and that. And it's like, it's almost like, if that's your mindset, how are you going to even be open to those opportunities? But I do think even for myself, thinking through business goals, like I love taking this time of year to really level set and understand where I want to go. But I always struggle being like, ooh, is that goal like too big? Should I make it more attainable? And I actually just hired a business coach to help push the boundaries with me a little bit more because I do think that my limiting beliefs specifically are with career and growth and what does that skill building look like as you grow in the unknown, because a lot of times, at least for me, the unknown can be exciting, but it can also be very scary. And I agree with you. A lot of times, like our mindset was developed when we were kids and like how we think about money, how we think about relationships. It's from a very, very long time ago. So rewiring makes a lot of sense because how can you really move forward if these systems that you put in place came from when you're a baby or a child and you're in a very different place wanting very different things. So I love hearing that because it makes a lot of sense now that I apply that to a situation of my own.
And a lot of the mindsets instilled in us, like, I don't know about your family, but I know about mine and my grandma and a lot of the culture at the time, there was a lot of fear.
Yes.
It was a very fear-based and scarcity-based culture, with everything that was happening in the early 1900s to the mid-1900s. So there was a lot of fear that I took on from my parents that is not my own, and I've had to do so much rewiring to release that. And also, this is why healing trauma is so important. Those events are very intense emotionally, and the more emotionally intense an event is in your life, the more it impacts your subconscious beliefs. And so those traumatic events that you might have experienced, whether they were big T trauma, little T trauma, like whether other people would think they're traumatic or not, like it doesn't matter. If something was traumatizing to you and it was a very heightened emotional experience, like it stamps your subconscious. So like say you got cheated on by your first boyfriend, like that is going to have such an influence on your subconscious mind. And you're going to be operating from a belief probably that I can't trust people. Wow. And you're going to have trust issues, and then that's going to show up in your relationship. And if you can't trust the other person, you can't build a relationship without trust.
That makes That makes sense. And I think that just to wrap up, we love talking about like your daily breakdown. And so I'm so curious on like, what time do you wake up? By the way. Yeah. So tell me like, what time do you wake up? Share with me, like, are there any mantras? Like, what does your day look like? If someone wanted just like a quick snapshot of the start to finish of a day in the life.
A day in the life. You are catching me at a very unstable time of my life because I'm literally splitting my time between New York and Philadelphia at the moment. So I'm not really having a ton of routines, but I will tell you a couple of constants that make a huge difference for me. I make sure to get 8 to 10 hours of sleep almost every night. Sleep's so important to me. I like to go to bed around 10:30 and wake up around like 7, but that doesn't always happen. I always start my day listening to a meditation or an activation on the Superhuman app. It's basically, she used to call them meditations. They're activations now because you don't have to sit down and close your eyes for all of them. Like you can listen to some while walking, but they have like everything from like a 3-minute pep talk about you're doing better than you think to a 15 minutes to start your day with a vibration of joy. And like, I will put it on as I like wash my face and I make my coffee. And it's just a great way to just start getting yourself in a positive headspace. And I honestly have found like when I make sure that I'm doing one that's focused on gratitude or I incorporate gratitude into it, I have such a better day.
Wow.
Just coming back to, because gratitude is a very heart-centered emotion. And like, honestly, one of the biggest things I feel like I've been learning lately is just how important it is to come from a heart-centered space with all of this. Because like, it can be so easy to like treat the universe like a genie and like just be like, I want this, I want that. And it's like really about, it's a relationship.
Right. And then are you doing coaching calls after that? Like, do you jump into helping other people or like, what does, like, how much time do you give yourself for you building up and setting yourself up for success for the day?
I usually give myself about an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to walk in the mornings. I haven't been great with it being cold lately. But yeah, I try to kind of like move my body, put good things into my head, have some time to sip my coffee. And then honestly, my schedule, and it changes every day, but I don't do calls or recordings until the afternoon because I'm much more creative in the morning. So that's when I'll write captions. That's when I'll brainstorm or I'll record a podcast. Like I like to do my creative work in the mornings, and then I'm kind of distracted and not as like focused. In the afternoon. So that's when I'm like, I'll take podcast interviews, whether it's for mine or I'm on somebody else's. I'll take a coaching call or two. But I try to keep it to like 2 to 3 because it definitely like I'm a projector. I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but I'm not a high energy. Like I need a lot of recovery time. I'm also introverted.
Oh, interesting. I love, oh my God, I can talk to you for hours. That's so interesting. And I think that it seems like you protect your time in a way that sets you up for success with mornings being more focused with creativity and then evenings or like the afternoons more focused on a few at most, whether it's podcast interviews, coaching, etc. And then what time do you end the workday normally?
I try to wrap by 5 or 6.
Okay. And then you have the rest of the night to yourself, and then bed by 10:30?
I try. Yep.
Okay. Try. Yes, of course. Try. This is like an ideal time stamp.
When I'm not super traveling and all over the place, this is what my days look like.
This is an ideal day in the life. Yeah. And the last question is, if someone wanted to pick up a book, whether it is a human design or manifestation or magnetism, like what would your one book recommendation be?
The Game of Life and How to Play It. It is so simple and I love the way she puts things. It's very different. She actually quotes scripture, and I'm not religious at all anymore. But it's so interesting the way it's just like, I feel like she's sharing wisdom that is just like been passed down through the ages. And it's all the principles I teach in manifestation and wildly different from how I would explain them and how I've heard anybody else explain them. But it's all the same. And I just think she puts it so simply and the stories are so good. And I just leave that book or any chapter I read so encouraged and like my faith restored. Because like a lot of this is faith.
Wow.
Faith in yourself, faith that everything's working out, faith that things are going to come to you. And it's hard to have when you've had bad things happen to you or life's been hard, or even just like hearing the news, honestly. And so,
okay, so I need to add that to my Amazon cart. Yeah. I love hearing how you separate your day. So I need to like think through my own energy and like what I feels me up earlier in the day versus in the afternoon. So I have like lots of tidbits here that I've learned from you. So thank you so much for coming on here. I can only imagine how much our listeners are going to take away from this because you've crammed so much knowledge in this short episode. So thank you so much.
It was such a pleasure. I really do hope that people get some takeaways out of this and it helps them just feel better and manifest better.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much and we'll see you next week.